If you're wanting to make your grooves sound more interesting with more depth and character, ghost notes are such a great way to spice them up. But the problem is that most of the time our ghost notes just sound sloppy. They don't sound clean and precise like we know they need to. Today we'll explore why this is the case. I think you're going to relate to this, and I'll share with you the proper technique for nailing these. Then we'll wrap up with a super simple, challenging, but simple, practical coordination exercise that will really get you nailing your ghost notes. We're talking technique and we're talking coordination. This is a really cool lesson, so let's dive in. You can do this. Hey everybody, welcome to The Non-Glamorous Drummer. I'm here to help you become the drummer everybody wants to play with, that musical, confident drummer that's really stepping into the skill that you know you're made to do, that you know you can accomplish. You just gotta have the right resources, and my job here, my goal here is to provide you with those tools so that you can really become the drummer you're made to be. And hey, while you're here, I have a free gift for you. My guess is that, seeing as how you're here today, you desire to grow and reach goals and eventually reach your ultimate drumming dreams, becoming that confident musical player you want to be. But the big problem that we all face is that a lot of times we don't have enough time. Number one, we don't have enough time to really practice all the things we want to practice. And we don't really have a lot of direction because everything is just confusing and overwhelming. There are so many voices out there across YouTube and the internet telling us what to practice. And so it just becomes overwhelming, and as a result, we make no progress. I've got a solution for you. Totally free PDF e-guide I want you to download here in the description. This is your cheat sheet handbook that outlines exactly what you should be practicing. We condense it into 3 core areas of practice where if you're working the skills in each of these core areas, you're going to grow quickly and your playing is going to be balanced. Your practicing is going to be well-rounded, and you're going to establish a foundation that will lead you to becoming that confident musical player you know you can be. You've just got to have the right tools in your arsenal, and this is going to give you that. This will help you with independence. We've got coordination exercises, tips on listening, some hand technique exercises. This is your one-stop shop, your cheat sheet handbook. So go download it. Know what to practice, the 3-part daily practice routine for achieving consistent growth and reaching your goals in just 30 minutes a day. Go download it. Let's get on with today's lesson. First, we're going to talk about why I think your ghost notes are sounding bad and sloppy. This is true for so many people. I think you're going to relate to this. But then we're going to work on fixing it. I'm going to share with you the grip change you have to make in order to play soft ghost notes cleanly and precisely, the 2 stick motions that you have to do in order to mix these ghost notes with backbeats. That's the only way to really play them in the midst of a groove. You have to have that dynamic control, which is kind of tricky. And then lastly, we'll talk about the simplest yet most helpful exercise for working your ghost notes and building your coordination, because it does take some coordination too. That's where the rubber meets the road. I'm going to give you a very cool specific exercise you can grab the PDF notation for, take to your practice room, and get to work on this. So let's dive in. Here is the biggest reason why so many people's ghost notes don't sound good. It's this: you're playing them too loudly. The definition of a ghost note is that it's very quiet compared to everything else. And if you're playing grooves that are like, unless you're going for that kind of sound where really there's a whole bunch of snare going on, that's going to feel way too busy. A lot of times ghost note grooves end up feeling busier than they need to be. I remember I was reading an interview with a Nashville session drummer a few years ago, and he was talking about, he was a young guy, probably in his 20s, about my age, and he was kind of coming up and doing a lot of sessions for the first time. And feedback that he was getting from producers was that he was playing too many ghost notes. And so he said that he learned he had to start cleaning things up. Another drummer friend of mine said that he came to that same realization a few years ago, where he was like, oh, suddenly my grooves feel way better when I take out the ghost notes. Now, I'm going to play devil's advocate here, because yes, sometimes you need to take out your ghost notes. Sometimes you're playing way too many ghost notes, but it does depend on the song. Some grooves really benefit from some of that dynamic depth and just cool, natural tastefulness that ghost notes add. But other grooves, yes, you need to take out your ghost notes, or you just need to not play as many of them. So yes, that is the case sometimes, but that's not so much where we're going today. What I want to help you do is play a lot of ghost notes if you want to play a lot of ghost notes, but make them sound really good so that they're really subtle and not overwhelming. Because my theory is that most of the time when a groove feels too busy, it's because the ghost notes are being heard too much rather than felt. What you want to do is make sure they're soft enough that if you're playing And especially if you're playing rim shot backbeats. So I don't have my ears and I wasn't hitting super hard. If I were to do rim shot backbeats, Then the backbeats are very loud, which makes the ghost notes even softer in comparison. But you can see how low my stick height is. I've got to keep the stick very low so that those ghost notes are very soft. And when you can do that, it allows you to play a lot more ghost notes, and they don't just stick out, because then by the time you mix the drums in with the rest of the band, whether you're recording or you're playing live, a lot of those ghost notes aren't really going to be heard. They're just going to be felt as this cool level of dynamic contrast in your groove. And that's where we want them to be. So that's really where we're going today. I want to help you do that. I want to help you play your ghost notes quietly and precisely and keep your backbeats nice and strong so that you can make them work whenever you want to play them. So let's dive into this. First thing is the grip change that you must make in order to play soft ghost notes. When you're playing loudly, it's totally okay to have a super loose hand. That's what we want. That's definitely what we want, where the stick is pivoting like this in our fulcrum and it's swinging back and forth. We've got all this stick motion within our hand. That is essential for when we're playing loudly. We want to have this open kind of stroke. But when we're playing softly, we don't want the big open kind of loose grip, because then we end up with... it starts sounding like popcorn. We start getting the popcorn effect, where we don't really have control over the stick when we're trying to play down here really low to the head when we're trying to stay loose here. And so don't confuse, you know, when I'm preaching looseness all the time, you'll hear other drummers, other teachers say that too, to be loose with your playing. Don't confuse that or try to use that too much when you're playing softly. A lot of times we don't talk so much about the technique to use when playing softly, because when we're playing more softly, we want to be firmer. We want to have the fingers wrapped around the stick and actually play more from our wrist. We don't need this kind of looseness in the hand. That leads to sloppiness when we've got this much margin of error down here right next to the head. Instead, grip a little more firmly, keeping the fingers on the stick, and it's literally just this up and down from the wrist. 100% playing from the wrist. There's no hinging at the fulcrum. You could even let your fulcrum be more of an index finger instead of middle finger, because it's just a little bit firmer. We're firming up the grip a little bit. But that's really the only way to become consistent and precise when you're playing softly. That's so important. So practice doing that, as tedious as it is. Ideally, I'd say flip your snares off and like put a towel or something on your snare, so you can really hear the articulation of those strokes. Put your practice pad on. If you've got an Evans real feel or like a harder, louder kind of pad, that's a great way to practice this. You can really hear your volumes. And if you're right here, I've got like a 4-inch stick height. Challenge yourself to go even lower. See how low you can go before it just falls apart. You might be just sitting here sweating. You feel like you're like back in school and you're taking the SAT or you're doing a math test and you're just like, oh, I'm so sick of this. I'm so done with this. But make yourself do it. Make yourself do this for a minute without stopping. I recommend like doing this along with the metronome, but then have like a timer, like a count up, count down, whatever going. That way you can just challenge yourself to, all right, I'm gonna keep this going for a minute, and then 2 minutes, and then 3 minutes. Because you've gotta have that repetition. So remember, we've got fingers on the stick is actually resting against my palm, and my hand is just going like this, just like knocking on a door. That's all we're doing. So if you make that grip shift, that's gonna help so much with playing softly. But that's only one piece of the puzzle, because we've gotta talk about how do we transition from being so soft to being so loud so that we can go and then back soft again, because we don't want to only just go soft loud, but we've also got to go loud soft. So ultimately the motion we've got to do here is, so what does our hand need to do to be able to play a super soft clean note where we've got this firmer grip, but then go loudly where we're supposed to have a looser grip, right? And then get firm again. How does this work? This is really the most core important thing we're getting into in this lesson. So if there's one thing you gain from this lesson, let it be this. This is where I want to make sure you're really paying attention, because this is a technique, a motion that unlocks a lot of things on the drums. If you can unlock the ability to go soft, loud, soft, soft, loud, soft, that's going to help with a lot of things. It's going to help with your molar. Like if you're trying to do with a lot of dynamic contrast, where instead of, that's fine, there's less dynamic contrast, but say you want to have more, this technique is going to help you with that. It's going to help, of course, with ghosting. It's going to help with any kind of shuffle pattern. If you're wanting to play like a blues shuffle, a Texas shuffle. By the way, there's a video lesson here on the channel about a Texas shuffle if you want to check it out. Total side note. If you're wanting to do like shuffles and patterns like that where you have to go back and forth between loud, soft, loud, soft. If you're wanting to do like a purdy shuffle or Rosanna, where either way it's that same, that kind of dynamic control is essential. So hopefully I've given you plenty of reason to work at this, plenty of reason to pay attention here. So let's dig into the nitty-gritty of how this works. I'm going to switch over to my practice pad so I can talk as I'm playing and not have as much volume going on here from the drum. And so you can totally practice along with me. I might actually play some rim shots on the pad too. You can play a rim shot on a practice pad just by playing basically the shaft. Hit the shoulder or shaft of the stick on the pad, so really the tip might not even touch, unless you have a practice pad that actually has a rim. But this will kind of be our loud sound versus our tap. And our tap might be barely audible if we're on a practice pad, but that's okay. Think back to when you were like a 3, 4, 5, 6-year-old kid, and maybe you like touched a hot stove for the first time. Or imagine right now, you walk up to your hot stove and you touch it. What are you gonna do? If you walk up and you touch your stove, you're gonna immediately jerk your hand back, right? Unless you're like a total idiot. But let's say we're smart and we're going to quickly back off. If you quickly touch something hot and you back off, then it's probably not gonna burn you. That's kind of the same kind of motion we want to do here with our stick. So imagine that this is the hot stove. You don't want to burn the tip of your stick. You're tapping it gently, but as soon as you tap, you want to get that stick out of there. You want to lift it up. This is kind of a wrist flick that needs to happen. And this is something that you've seen me do whenever I'm talking about the core mechanics of grip. And you'll see me like tossing the stick back and forth in the air, or just call it the stick toss. And it's kind of a prerequisite to playing singles where you want to make sure your fulcrum is working. And a key motion to doing that is just this up and down from the wrist. I'm not twisting the stick back and forth with my fingers. Fingers aren't doing anything. You can see how static that is. I'm just flicking it back and forth with my wrist. That's exactly what we need to do here. So we play the tap, and naturally the stick doesn't want to bounce anywhere because there's no energy here. We're just barely tapping. But if you flick the stick up, so we're just flicking our wrist up, flick it back up, that's the step one here. So tap, and pop the stick up. Make sure that tap is as soft as possible. And if you prefer to do this not on a pad, just so that you can hear how soft or loud you are, great, fine, that's perfect. You can even practice this on a table, like a tabletop. Be as quiet as you can with that tap, and then just snap the stick right back up. It's gonna feel very dramatic and exaggerated right now, but that's okay, because sometimes it's good to exaggerate these motions as we're learning them, and then they'll become a little bit more subtle and fluid as we link all the steps together. So then we have the stick up here, which makes step 2 very easy. Then we're just snapping it down to play like a rim shot or hit the drum or the pad hard. So that's our step 2. All we're doing is throwing it down. But the step 3 is how we handle this rebound, because we don't want to then play loudly and let the stick bounce all the way up, because then we've got to play a soft note next. So that means we have to choke the rebound. So our step 3, after the stick comes down hard, hits really hard, it's going to naturally bounce to about right here. No matter how hard you try to choke out a rebound, unless you do that, like a total dead stroke, that's the technical term for it that we never really use. Unless you're doing a dead stroke, the stick is naturally going to bounce to here. That's okay. As soon as it bounces to here, it needs to come back to rest right here. So if you hit the drum hard, and as soon as the stick hits, you put down, like you squeeze down on the stick, so firm up your grip, same kind of grip we used for the quiet playing, then that's going to bring your stick back to rest right here. So just watch me do that. Watch what's happening. See how every time it comes up to here. But I'm firming up to choke out that rebound so it doesn't come all the way up to here, but then I'm bringing it back to rest right here very quickly. That way, immediately after, I can then play a tap. And that's really the final step. We could call that the 4th step. So the first step is tap, flicking the stick up. Step number 2 is coming down hard. Step number 3 is choking it out. Step number 4 is just a final little tap there. Now what we want to do, I know for some of you, we're all different personalities here. But I know I've had a lot of students where they are the engineer mind, they are the analytical mind, and I can relate to that. I like analyzing things, I like thinking through the details of what's going on, even though I don't know that I'm that much of a detail person. Eventually I just want to move past it and just do it. But if you're one of those people where you're really thinking through this and analyzing, I encourage you to not fixate too much. I want you to practice the steps. 1, 2, 3, 4. if those are our steps. And as quickly as you can, begin doing this in a more fluid manner. It's kind of like if you're learning a foreign language. You're learning a new language. You've got to learn some words, but as quickly as you can, you've got to string those together into a sentence. And then you learn how the sentence sounds and you're good to go. That's kind of what we want to do here. So practice all those steps together in sequence. Go slow. It's okay to go very slowly. Don't sit there. This is another mistake I've seen from students where I'll tell them to do this and they sit there going. And they're getting angrier and angrier as they do it because they're just going way too fast. It's just mental overload. Slow down. Be patient. Go very slow with this. Boom, ba, boom. Well, I don't know what tempo this is. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter so much what tempo is. Don't even worry about the metronome yet. Just go very slowly, thinking through the steps, at least of 1, 2, 3. Soft, loud, soft. Remembering that our original steps are tap, snap, down hard, choke it out, and then tap. And so when we flick the stick up and it comes up for that big accent, I'm extending the fingers a little bit. So my grip's becoming loose right there in that moment. So remember, I'm starting off firm, flicking up. I'm loosening up as the stick comes up. As it comes back down, it's hitting. I'm firming up to then choke it out. I'm at that firm, quiet grip again and tap. So those are our two grips. That's the grip shift that needs to happen. We're going from firm to loose, back to firm. That's what's happening with our hand, and that's what's manipulating the rebound and helping us get this result. All the while, we're trying to keep those ghost notes as soft as possible. One of those times just now, I even missed the ghost note. I was trying to be so soft, I didn't even hear anything. And so that's okay if you realize like you totally missed the ghost note. That's not a terrible thing. Try to make sure it's there every time, but the goal is to be as soft as possible. We don't want this to turn into... That's just sloppy. We want to have as much contrast as we can, otherwise it defeats the purpose of this exercise. And you'll find that this helps with molar, for one thing. Especially if you want to swing it, especially if you're doing a blues shuffle. So there's so much reason to practice this beyond just the ghosting thing. But let's dig into a little more specifically what we want to do with the ghosting, because now we want to talk about the simplest yet most helpful exercise for working your ghost notes and building coordination. So let's talk about an exercise. I'm going to take the pad back off, flip the snares on. We're going to play some grooves. This is going to be really fun. This is also very challenging, and I definitely want to make sure you go slowly at first. We're not at all in a hurry to go fast. So the way that this exercise works, I've got the notation up here. I'm going to be following along. I'll put it on the screen for you, and you can also grab this in a PDF download for free. So what we're going to do is we're going to play just a basic beat. And then each time we play through it, we're going to add one extra ghost note. Actually, two at a time. Really, we're adding two ghost notes at a time. The first time, we're going to add a little ghost note after each backbeat. So it's going to become... loud, soft. Then we're going to add a ghost note before each backbeat. So then we've got our motion we just learned. Just like that. And then from there, we're just continuing to add in additional ghost notes. So I'll play through the entire thing. I'm going to go 60 beats a minute, but go as slow as you need to before ever trying to go fast, because the focus is cleanliness and precision, not just time precision, but also dynamic precision. There's a whole nother kind of coordination that is dynamic coordination, where we're not just talking rhythm and notes, we're talking about how loud are we playing them. I guess we could call that articulation and quality of sound. That's something else to think about, and something that does build your coordination because it requires coordination. It requires a lot of intentional thought. So focus on the first three steps. First three steps of this. When you're starting out, don't even worry about all the craziness we're going to add into this. Just focus on the first couple of parts, getting this happening. If you can do that, you are off to the races. That is the core of what we want to be able to do here today. And then from there, we're just going to keep adding in ghost notes. So I'm going to play through this for you so you can hear how this sounds, how this exercise works. And you can play along. Feel free to play along with me. Notation will be on the screen. You can also grab that PDF download. So I hope you know that you can master ghost notes. And in doing this, you're going to end up getting better at molar. You're going to get better at the ability to do shuffle patterns, whether it's shuffle timekeeping with the right hand or like a blues shuffle thing with the left hand. Really cool what you can do with this. And you're just making your grip more versatile. You're becoming more capable of controlling rebound and therefore dynamics. And the more dynamic variation you can put into your playing, the more musical you're going to sound. So I think this is one of those lessons that can really help you tap into some musicality and creativity that maybe you didn't know you had. I hope you know you can do this. And hey, before you go, be sure to dive into my free PDF e-guide, Know What to Practice, the 3-part daily practice routine for reaching your goals and really achieving growth, even if you just have 30 minutes a day. Because a lot of times the problem is that we lack direction in our practicing, we don't really have enough time. But if you can just allot a little bit of time and then suddenly have a lot of direction, which is what this guide provides you with, you get so much more done in that short amount of time. It's kind of the 80-20 rule, where 20% of what you practice is giving you 80% of the results. So this guide is narrowing it down and saying, all right, here are the few things to work on that are going to give you well-balanced results so that you're hitting all the key spots in your practicing and you're getting results. So grab the PDF notation guide for today's lesson, grab that e-guide, grab the Know What to Practice, build four-way independence, grip your sticks better for speed and fluidity. There's also some hand technique exercises there, and reach your musical goals. I know you can do it. You just got to dive in and take action on this. As always, thanks so much for watching today. Thanks for hanging out. Hope you got a lot out of this lesson. I hope you enjoyed it. I had fun. This was a really cool lesson. I love ghost notes. I think it's really going to increase your creativity. So I'll see you on the next lesson. In the meantime, have a great weekend. Have a great week. Stay non-glamorous. Know that you can do this.